I like making hand tools, but there's one common hand tool feature I can't make right now, and that's knurling. Knurling is a textured pattern added to a part to make it easier to grip or twist. It shows up on all sizes of hand tools, knobs, and dials. In particular, knurls show up on hand planes. Since I eventually want to make a metal hand plane, I need a way to make knurling. There are two common designs for knurling tools, a scissor type and a bump type. Both of these take a pair of hard steel wheels and force them into the work to create the pattern. I could just buy an existing tool, but I'd like to try a different design. About 10 years ago, a YouTube channel called Tom's Techniques had a video series on this clamp-style knurling tool. Tom's videos share a lot of machine shop knowledge, and I've always wanted to try this project to see what I could learn from his designs. Unfortunately, Tom's website isn't online anymore, so I needed to use the Wayback Machine to recover the plans he posted. I'll leave a link to both Tom's channel and the plans in the description. The first part I'm going to work on is this mounting bracket. This is a steel part that will allow me to attach the tool to the lathe. This is a pretty simple low tolerance part. It's just 2 rabbets and 4 tapped holes, but there's a fair amount of material to remove for my small machines. I recently picked up this larger dual surface plate. It's quite oversized for this project, but it should be a big help for some hand scraping projects I have planned for later in the year. I'm laying out my features with a height gauge. When I use the digital readout on the mill to cut these features, the layout lines are a helpful sanity check. Layout also helps me to check my understanding of the print before I start taking any cuts. I'll start by drilling and tapping the 4 holes on the end of the bracket while the part is still simple to hold in the vise. Then I can lay the part on its side and start working on roughing in the rabbets on either side of the part. I need to remove about 1 3/4 cubic inches of steel to form these features, which is a lot for my small machine. Normally, I would try to look for a way to do the bulk of the material removal with a saw, but there's no way to do that on this part. Instead, I'm going to try this feature 2 different ways. One roughing technique I've heard people recommend is plunge milling, where you pull down on the quill in order to cut from the top down. That's what I'm going to try on this first rabbet. I found that I could take a step over of about 100 thousandths with this technique, which is pretty large for my small mill. My mill doesn't have a depth stop, so I had to be careful not to plunge too far. The biggest disadvantage of this technique is that it requires more individual steps than just setting a depth of cut and feeding across the part. Here's how the part looks after roughing. The walls still need a lot of refinement, so I'm side milling them to bring them to final dimension. Now that the first rabbet is done, I can take the part out of the mill for a quick deburr with hand files. For the next rabbet, I'm going to use a roughing end mill to remove the bulk of the waste. This type of end mill has serrated edges that allow me to take deeper cuts, but they leave a coarser surface finish. For this type of roughing, I like to use a mixture of anchor lube and water to keep the end mill cool. This mixture is thin enough to spread with a brush, but it sticks to the part and doesn't smoke when heated. I also like that it's easy to clean up. I found that using the roughing end mill was about as fast as plunge milling for removing material. If you have both roughing and conventional end mills, the roughing end mill probably requires less mental overhead to use correctly on a small machine. Once I finished deburring the rabbets, I needed to round over the various corners of the part. I decided to do this with a file because I didn't have the right tooling for the mill. I scribed quarter circles on the part with a template and approximated the corner with 3 planes before blending everything together. Here's the bracket after filing. This part was a good warm-up for the rest of the project. Next, I need to make the Knurl Holders. These are simple rectangular parts that have a slot and a dowel pin that's a press fit to provide a pivot for the knurl. I started with layout at the surface plate, then move to the mill to cut my slots. I found that this 1/4-inch end mill is really in the sweet spot for this small milling machine. It can take fairly deep cuts for its size. I recently added this set of gauge blocks to the shop. These blocks are precisely ground to known widths, so we can use them to assess whether the slot is sized correctly. Here I learned that the bottom of the slot is narrower than the top. This surprised me until I measured the outside of the block. When I machined the slot, I released stresses in a part and the sides moved outward by about 3/1000ths. To fix this, I put the part in a vise and gently squeezed it back to the correct width. Next I need to form holes for the dowel pin. I started by roughing out the hole with a drill, then I used a 1/4-inch reamer to remove the remaining waste. The dowel pin needs to be a slip fit on one side of the holder, so the last thing I need to do is to ream the top hole with an oversized reamer. To finish the part I need to put a 45-degree chamfer on 4 corners. I used a V-block to help me get consistent results on these features without having to touch off each time I remove the part from the vise. Now that the 2 Knurl holders are complete, we can try fitting the dowel pins. The dowel slides easily through one hole, but I can't push it flush by hand, which is exactly what we want. The next step is to assemble the Knurl holders and press the dowels in with a punch. Here are the finished Knurl holders. We can check that both knurls spin freely without side-to-side play. The last and most complex part I need to make is the aluminum body for the tool. This part has a large central bore, holes on 4 of its sides, and a precise slot on one side to receive the 2 Knurl holders. The body of the tool has a large central hole that's more than 2 inches in diameter. I don't have a twist drill that big, and removing this much material with a boring bar would be quite time-consuming. Instead, I'm going to try removing the bulk of the waste with a hole saw. To make this work, I need to drill a relief hole so that the chips from the saw have somewhere to exit the kerf. I learned that my small mill isn't a great fit for this type of cutter. There was quite a bit of chatter, and you can see the machine shaking quite a bit, indicating a lack of rigidity. Partway through the cut, I realized that chips had welded themselves to the saw. I learned that I needed to use light pressure on the quill and a lot of cutting fluid in order to prevent this. The relief hole that I drilled worked fairly well, and I could see chips piling up under the hole as I made progress. Here's the slug of material the hole saw removed. Looking at the side of the slug, we can see a change in surface finish where the chips started welding themselves to the saw teeth. The finish on the inside of this bore still needs refinement, so I'm going to use the boring head to bring the hole to final dimension. I took a quick measurement with a bore gauge to get a ballpark idea how much material remained to remove. The hole saw cut about 40 thousandths over its stated size, so I have about 20 thousandths left to go. Using the hole saw saved time, but I got lucky on this step. When the bore was fully cleaned up, I had used up almost all of my 15 thousandths tolerance budget. It would have been better to start with a hole saw about an 1/8 inch smaller. The rest of the features on this face of the part are pretty simple. I need to drill and counterbore 8 clearance holes for bolts. I didn't have the appropriate size counterbore, so I'm going to use an end mill to form the counterbores this time. Next, I need to drill and tap 2 holes on the ends of this part. I don't have enough vertical room on the mill to easily do this, so we're going to try something different. The MCO lathe came with its own milling head, and I don't often use it because it's less rigid, but it is very convenient for drilling holes at odd angles. I'll start by rotating the head so the spindle runs horizontally, then I'll lower it into position. I removed the tool post on the lathe and replaced it with an angle plate that's indicated so that it's parallel with the lathe's ways. Then I indicated the spindle to verify that it's also aligned with the ways. The lathe doesn't have a DRO, but the position of these holes isn't especially critical. The layout lines were very helpful for checking that the holes would land where I intended. Once this was set up, drilling the holes was quite easy. The milling head is small, but it was pretty well manufactured, and the fact that it's gear-driven means it has a surprising amount of torque. I have 2 more holes to drill and tap in the top of the part. These are for screws that will lock the knurl holders in position. The last important feature I need to machine on this part is a slot for the knurl holders. I flipped the part over in the vise, so I'm using an indicator to find the center of the bore. The slot is supposed to be 5/8 of an inch wide, with a tolerance of only 3/1000. If the slot is too wide, the knurls won't have enough rigidity to cut well, so I need to be careful. I removed most of the material from the slot with a short 1/2 inch end mill. Then I established the rear wall of the slot. On this cut, I just focused on making the wall straight with a relatively good surface finish. When I cut the front wall, I used both my calipers and gauge blocks to verify how much waste I still needed to remove. I made myself a pair of go, no-go blocks so that I could easily check whether my part was within tolerance. Here's the final check on the slot. The go gauge slides in, but the no-go gauge won't fit. We can also test with the knurl holder to see that it slides freely but doesn't have any perceptible play side to side. With all of the critical features done, I needed to remove the corners from the part, which will reduce weight and make the tool easier to handle. There's a lot of material to remove, so I used the bandsaw to cut off the bulk of the waste. Then I used the mill to make a finish cut to my scribe lines. Here's the body with all 4 corners removed. I decided I wanted a more uniform surface finish, so I went over each face with a Scotch-Brite ball. Finally, it was time to try assembling the knurler for the first time. This was harder to film than it was to assemble. We just need to put the knurl holder in the slot in the body, then trap it there by bolting on either the mounting bracket or a small cover plate. The test assembly showed there was a problem with one of my parts. The knurl holder should slide freely with the bolts tightened, but instead it was seized up. I did some measuring and realized my knurl holder was about 5/10,000ths oversized. To fix the problem, I lapped the knurl holder on a diamond plate until it was the correct thickness. Then I rechecked the fit. Off camera, I turned up these small brass buttons. I put the buttons into the 2 vertical holes so that the bolts I used to lock the position of the knurls won't gall up the sides of the knurl holders. Tom's design calls for case hardening these parts, which would also prevent galling, but I don't have a good setup for case hardening, so this was a simple alternative. Last, I'm going to install the horizontal screws. Tightening these screws is what will allow us to push the knurls into the work to create our pattern. Finally, it was time to test the new tool. I mounted it in a holder and then spent some time adjusting the height so that the knurls would run on center. I I started testing on some aluminum. You can see that as I press the knurls into the work, swarf starts to accumulate in the cutting oil. Rewatching the footage, I think this indicated a problem. I was pushing the knurls into the work too aggressively, and any chips that broke off were ground back into the knurling. The result was a fairly inconsistent pattern with a lot of rough edges. Here's a later test in steel that came out better. On this test, I increased the pressure more gradually and used a slow stream of dark cutting oil to wash away chips as they formed. This knurl came out cleaner, but I still need more practice. And I suppose that's the nature of shop projects. You make a tool and realize it opens up a whole new set of skills and tricks that you need to learn. That's a wrap for this project. I'm looking forward to using this tool on some upcoming hand plane builds. Executing Tom's design was a useful study in how to achieve different tolerances, and I learned a lot. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.